My name is Stephanie. I'm 35, and if you'd asked me a couple of years ago, I would have said my life was stable, maybe even blessed. But then life tilted on its axis, and I've been stumbling ever since. I married David when I was 26. He was steady, thoughtful, the kind of man who would check the gas before a road trip twice, just to be sure. Our first home wasn't grand, but it was ours, a small three-bedroom in a neighborhood where the kids still rode bikes in the street. For a while, it felt like the beginning of everything. Then cancer arrived. Not all at once, but in slow, brutal waves. Doctors' offices, the smell of antiseptic, the sound of machines humming at night. David fought for nearly 2 years. I fought with him, clinging to the hope that sheer determination might bend fate. But hope doesn't cure. He died, and with him went the rhythm of my life. It's been over a year, but grief is a strange animal. It doesn't leave, it waits in corners, surfacing in quiet moments. Sometimes I talk to him still. At night, sitting on the bed we shared, I whisper into the dark, I'm trying, David. I promise I'm trying. We never had children. That emptiness became louder after his death. I poured myself into work instead, marketing for a tech company. It pays well enough. More than enough, in fact. I can afford the life I have. I can even afford the things other people in my family can't. That's where the trouble began. David's grandfather had left him a house, an old Victorian, big and beautiful, with creaking staircases and stained glass windows that turned morning light into shards of color. We always said we'd decide what to do with it someday. Someday never came. After David's death, the house sat silent like a memory sealed in wood and plaster. Meanwhile, my parents were still in the home they'd bought 30 years ago. Age had not been kind to it. The roof leaked whenever rain tapped against it too hard. The plumbing rattled and clanked like bones. Walking across the floor in certain spots felt like testing a rotten branch. They complained about it often, their voices always carrying the same undertone, exhaustion, resentment, and something else I couldn't yet name. Then there was my sister Megan. She's 28, the youngest. Where I'd chosen stability early, she drifted. Part-time jobs, half-finished degrees, apartments rented with roommates she barely knew. I wanted to believe she just hadn't found her footing yet. 6 months after David's death, she confessed she couldn't make rent. So I stepped in. Rent, groceries, even her phone bill sometimes. It all slid quietly from my bank account to hers. I told myself it was temporary, that she'd get back on her feet. I told myself helping was the right thing to do. But the truth, it gave me something to cling to. Without David, without children, I convinced myself maybe my role was to be the caretaker, the one who kept everyone afloat. I remember one night vividly, Megan called crying about an overdraft fee. I sat on the kitchen floor, phone pressed to my ear, nodding silently as though she could see me. When I transferred her money, she sighed with relief and said, "You always save me, Liv. I don't know what I'd do without you." The words warmed me. For a moment, I believed them. But warmth can be deceptive. My parents' calls followed a similar rhythm. Stephanie, the water heater's broken. Stephanie, the gutters are falling apart. Always something. I wired money, scheduled repairs, sent contractors. Each time I told myself, they're my parents. Of course I should help. And yet late at night, staring at David's picture, doubts flickered. Was I helping or was I being consumed? One evening, sitting at their kitchen table while rainwater dripped into a bucket by the fridge, my mother sighed. "You're lucky, honey. 2 houses, no children to worry about, a good salary. Sometimes I think you don't realize how fortunate you are." My father added with a tired chuckle, "We're too old to keep patching up this place. It'd be easier to just buy something new, but we don't have that kind of money." Their words lingered, not just complaints, but reminders of what I had, of what they didn't. I smiled weakly, offered more help, but inside I felt the ground shift. Afterward, when I got home, I sat in David's grandfather's Victorian. I hadn't been there much since he died. Dust had gathered on the banisters, the silence almost oppressive. Yet walking through its empty rooms, I could almost hear his laughter echoing faintly. It was too much house for me alone. Too big, too hollow. I ran my hand along the carved banister and whispered, "What do I do with this?" "David, what would you want me to do?" The next morning, I caught myself staring at the Victorian again in my mind. My parents' crumbling home, their weary complaints. Megan's struggles. The guilt settled in like fog. It seemed wrong for this house to sit empty while my family scraped by. I began to think maybe this was what David would want for me to use, what we had to protect family. Maybe this was the way to give his memory purpose. At first, the idea seemed gentle, even noble. But beneath it, something darker stirred a quiet fear that if I didn't keep giving, they might stop needing me. And if they didn't need me, who was I? That was the seed. The seed of a decision that would change everything. I didn't yet realize that generosity can sometimes be the sharpest blade that love can be twisted into obligation. I thought I was helping. I thought I was honoring David. I thought I was building closeness. Instead, I was opening a door I would soon wish I'd kept locked. When the idea first rooted in my mind, it seemed so simple. My parents were struggling in their collapsing house. I had a grand empty one just sitting there. Why shouldn't I let them have it? The thought bloomed into conviction overnight. I remember sitting at their kitchen table, papers scattered with bills and receipts for plumbing repairs. The room smelled faintly of mildew rainwater still dripping into that ever-present bucket by the fridge. My mother rubbed her temples, sighing, "This house is more work than it's worth. Some nights I'm afraid the roof will fall in on us while we sleep." My father muttered, "We should just move, but how? Everything costs so much now. It's not like we can afford a mortgage in our 60s. I blurted it out before I could overthink. Then, take David's house, the Victorian. It's too much for me anyway. It should be yours." The silence that followed was heavy, stunned. My mother's hands froze mid-motion. My father blinked at me as though he hadn't heard correctly. Then, like a dam-breaking emotion, flooded the room. "Oh, Stephanie," Mom whispered, tears welling in her eyes. She reached across the table, clutching my hands. "Are you serious? You'd really do that for us?" My father stood abruptly and wrapped me in a hug tighter than any he'd given me since I was a little girl. "You're the best daughter a parent could ask for. David would be proud of you." I should have felt joy, and in a way I did, but underneath there was a strange flutter in my chest, a mix of relief and something sour I couldn't yet name. Almost immediately, their gratitude turned into practicality. "When can we get the paperwork started?" Dad asked, voice brisk, like he was discussing a business deal. "Does this kind of transfer take long?" Mom added, wiping her eyes but already leaning forward eagerly. "I'll call my lawyer tomorrow," I said softly, still dazed by their reaction. That night I told myself I'd done the right thing. I even felt lighter, as though I'd honored David by sharing his legacy. But as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I wondered why my parents' joy had seemed rushed, like they'd been waiting for me to say those exact words. The following week, I arranged a family dinner. I wanted to celebrate, to make the gift feel less transactional and more like a shared blessing. I cooked at my house roast chicken, mashed potatoes, the comfort foods we grew up with. Megan arrived late, breezing in with a bottle of cheap wine. She hugged me with exaggerated warmth, whispering, "You're a saint, Liv. Seriously." Then she winked, adding under her breath, "Guess I should start picking out curtains." I laughed awkwardly, unsure if she was joking. At the table, conversation flowed too easily toward the house. My parents speculated about furniture placement, what colors might brighten the living room, whether the attic would need new insulation. Megan, sipping wine, chimed in. "I saw this gorgeous velvet couch online. It would look perfect in the front parlor. What do you think, Mom?" I froze with my fork halfway to my mouth. The front parlor. She said it like she already lived there. Dad chuckled. "Plenty of space in that house. Everyone will be comfortable." "Everyone?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. Megan waved her hand. "I mean, when I visit. You know me. I'm always crashing at Mom and Dad's anyway. Easier if they're in a house that actually fits all of us." She grinned, but something in her eyes lingered too long on me, like she was testing boundaries. The rest of the dinner passed with laughter and clinking glasses, but unease coiled tighter in my stomach. They spoke of the Victorian not as something I was giving, but as something they already owned. After they left, I wandered into my backyard, night air, cool against my skin. I stared up at the dark sky and whispered to David again. "I'm doing what you'd want, right? Helping them, keeping family together." The only answer was silence broken by the sound of crickets. 2 days later, we sat in my lawyer's office. He explained the property transfer process, drafting documents, signatures, the usual bureaucracy. My parents leaned forward, eagerly nodding at every word. My mother clutched her purse like a girl waiting for a birthday gift. My father drummed his fingers on the table, impatient. I smiled politely, but my chest tightened. It was all happening fast. Too fast. Afterward, Dad asked casually, "Do you have spare keys to the house? Might as well take a look around. Start planning where to put our things." It seemed harmless enough. I handed over a set without hesitation. "Just don't move anything yet. There are some of David's grandfather's things I'd like to go through first." "Of course," Honey Mom said sweetly, but the way her eyes flickered toward Megan made me shiver. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing the attic of the Victorian filled with dusty boxes of David's childhood photos, toys, letters, memories he'd never gotten to revisit. I decided I'd go in the morning before work, collect the pieces of his past before the house no longer belonged to me. I didn't know it then, but that decision, simple sentimental, would lead me straight into the truth I'd been blind to all along. Because some doors once opened show you things you can't ever unsee. The morning I chose to visit the Victorian, the sky was pale gray, heavy with clouds that seemed ready to burst. My car had given up the day before, engines sputtering out in the driveway like a tired old man refusing to go one step further, so I called for a taxi, clutching my tote bag, determined. When I arrived, the house looked exactly as I remembered, towering, dignified, with its stained glass windows catching the dim light. Unlocking the front door felt strange. The keys I had just handed to my parents days ago dangled from my fingers like a reminder. This wasn't truly mine anymore, was it? Inside, the air smelled of dust and old wood. The silence wrapped around me, thick and expectant. I climbed the narrow staircase, every step groaning under my weight until I reached the attic. The room was cluttered with boxes, trunks, and forgotten furniture draped in sheets. I pulled the chain of a lone bulb, its yellow light casting long shadows. For an hour, I sifted through David's grandfather's things, sepia-toned photographs, toys carved from wood letters, written in elegant script. Each piece felt like touching a fragment of David's past, the boy who became the man I loved. My chest ached, but for once it was a tender ache. Then I heard the crunch of tires on gravel outside. My body stiffened. Peering through the attic window, I saw a car pulling into the driveway. I assumed it might be a curious neighbor. But then the front door opened. Voices drifted upward, familiar voices. My parents and Megan. I froze, unsure whether to announce myself. But something about their tone, light, laughing, conspiratorial, made me pause. I crouched low between boxes, heart hammering. "This house is perfect for you, Megan." My mother's voice floated up, warm with excitement. "You can start packing your things." My stomach lurched. Megan laughed, the sound sharp. "I can't believe we're actually doing this. Do you think Stephanie will be okay with it?" My father's response was a low chuckle. "We're not telling Stephanie yet. It'll be a surprise. She'll calm down eventually. She always does." I clamped a hand over my mouth, bile rising in my throat. Then came the words that pierced deeper than any knife. "Mom Stephanie can be safely used for our purposes. She'll be upset at first, but she'll forgive us. She always forgives, and she'll keep helping just like she always has." The air drained from my lungs. Used. Like I was a tool, not a daughter. Megan's voice chimed in, casual and cruel. "She's rich anyway. One house is plenty for her. Honestly, what does a lonely widow need with two?" A silence followed, broken by my mother's chilling reply. "Eventually, we'll take her other house too. Houses are for families, not women who will never remarry or have children. Megan, you're our future. You'll give us grandchildren. Stephanie's role is just supporting you." My vision blurred. My family, the people I had bled myself dry to help, were carving up my life as if I were already gone. Instinct took over. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone, hitting record. If I couldn't trust them, I'd at least have proof. Downstairs, footsteps echoed as Megan began wandering from room to room. "I'm putting my couch over here," she said, her heels clacking against the hardwood. "And this wall, ugh, it needs something brighter, maybe sage green." My mother's laughter followed. "First, we'll get rid of all this old junk." David's grandfather had such terrible taste. Out with the old, in with the new. "No kidding," Megan scoffed. "This furniture is hideous. I'll throw it all out. The place needs a complete makeover." David's memories, his history, they were trash to her. I pressed myself deeper into the shadows, shaking violently. Every word I heard rewrote the narrative of my life. I wasn't a cherished daughter, not a grieving sister. I was a resource, a wallet with legs, a fool who had believed her love was enough. For an hour, I listened as they planned out the house like architects of a future I wasn't part of. Dad mentioned how they'd handle Stephanie when the time came, as if I were a problem to be managed. Megan giggled about hosting parties, about how she'd finally have a home worthy of her status. Finally, the front door slammed. Car doors shut. The engine roared to life. Their laughter faded down the driveway. But I didn't move. Not for a long time. I stayed crouched in that dusty attic, my phone still recording, even though the house was silent again. My mind replayed their words like a broken record. Used. Lonely widow. Doesn't need two houses. I wanted to scream, to storm downstairs and confront them to shatter their smug certainty. But another part of me, the part that had survived David's death, the part that knew survival meant patience, whispered, "Not yet. Let them believe. Then strike when they least expect it." I dialed my lawyer from the attic, my voice shaking. "I need to cancel the property transfer," I said. "Is there a problem?" he asked, concerned. "There's a problem," I whispered, staring at the dust motes dancing in the dim light. "The deal is off. I'll explain later." When I finally stepped outside, the air felt different, colder. The house, once a relic of David's love, now stood as proof of betrayal. On the taxi ride back, I kept replaying the recording. Their voices were crystal clear, the venom in their tone undeniable. My family had drawn their battle lines, and I, quiet grieving underestimated, was no longer the pawn in their game. I was about to become something they didn't expect, the one person who could end it. The morning after that attic revelation, I woke up with swollen eyes and a pounding head. Sleep had been shallow, haunted by replay after replay of their voices. I couldn't eat. Coffee turned bitter in my mouth. But I clung to one thought, at least I had proof. Still nothing prepared me for what came next. Scrolling through Facebook on my lunch break, I nearly dropped my phone. Megan had posted a photo of the Victorian my house captioned, "My new home, can't wait to start this next chapter. Housewarming party coming soon." She even added celebratory emojis and tagged the location like a proud homeowner. My hand shook as I clicked the comments. Friends congratulated her. Coworkers sent heart emojis. One even wrote, "Finally a place that fits you, girl." Megan responded to each with smug gratitude. Heat flooded my body, equal parts humiliation and rage. They weren't just plotting behind my back anymore. They were declaring victory publicly. I drove straight to the house, adrenaline pushing me forward. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the lawn as I marched up the porch steps, keys in hand. But when I slipped one into the lock, it wouldn't turn. They'd changed the locks. For a moment, I just stood there numb, staring at the doorknob. The reality hit like ice water. I couldn't get into my own property. I dialed my mother, trying to steady my voice. She answered cheerfully as though nothing were wrong. "Why did you change the locks on my house?" I demanded. A beat of silence. Then her voice hardened. "It's not your house anymore, Stephanie. It's ours now. We can do whatever we want with it." "Excuse me," my voice cracked. "We're giving it to Megan," she said, her tone matter of fact. "You should come to terms with that. Forget this house and move on." My throat tightened. Move on? This isn't some sweater I lent you, it's property. It's my legal property. "Don't be dramatic," she snapped. "Megan is having a housewarming party in 2 weeks. Honestly, your presence there would be highly undesirable." Her dismissal sliced deeper than her words. I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. But my phone buzzed almost immediately, this time Megan. A text lit up the screen. "Hey, sis. Saw you at the house earlier. Sorry you couldn't get in. Don't worry, I'll make sure your old junk is moved out before the party. You should be happy for me." My hands trembled. My heart raced. I typed furiously. "It's not your house. You'll regret this." The dots appeared she was typing. Then her reply came casual and cruel. "Relax, Liv. You already have your house. Don't be selfish. Mom and Dad agree it's time you let go." I stared at the message until the letters blurred. Selfish. After everything I had given her, rent, food, groceries, endless bailouts, I was selfish. That night, I sat across from my lawyer in his office, shoving my phone onto his desk with the screenshot of Megan's post. "They changed the locks," I said flatly. "They're trying to steal my house. I want eviction papers drawn up immediately." He frowned but nodded. "We'll prepare them tomorrow. Do you still have proof of ownership?" I handed him the folder he'd given me weeks ago. Every document, every deed. All in my name. "Good," he said. "They don't have a case. We'll also need evidence of their bad faith. Anything you can provide." I slid my phone across again, this time playing the recording from the attic. Their voices filled the room, sharp and undeniable. His eyebrows shot up. "This is gold," he murmured. "You've got them cornered." For the first time in weeks, I felt something like relief. But it was cold, calculated. I wasn't safe yet. I needed more than legal papers. I needed a plan. That's when I thought of Aunt Linda, my dad's sister. She'd always been the odd one out in the family, kinder, quieter, less greedy. She adored David, even cried at his funeral, while the rest of my relatives made polite small talk. If anyone could help me, it was her. I called that night. She picked up on the second ring. "Stephanie, you sound off. What's wrong?" I hesitated, then poured everything out: the scheme, the locks, Megan's post. Her silence on the other end stretched long, broken only by a sharp inhale. "Those bastards," she hissed. I'd never heard her curse before. "How could they do this to you?" "I need your help," I whispered. "Megan's having a housewarming party. I want to be there. Quietly. Will you let me in?" There was no hesitation. "Yes. Tell me when and where. I'll get you through the back door." As we hung up, I finally allowed myself a grim smile. The next 2 weeks were hell. Megan filled social media with posts, paint swatches held against the Victorian walls, photos of furniture deliveries, selfies in the parlor with the caption, "Home Sweet Home." Each one was a knife twisting deeper. My parents stayed quiet, avoiding texts. Their silence felt like confirmation they believed they'd won. But I waited, patiently, like a chess player watching pawns march into a trap. Every night, I laid out the folder of ownership documents on my kitchen table. I replayed the attic recording until their voices no longer broke me, they fueled me. And I rehearsed what I would say not just to them, but to every witness at that party. If they wanted a show, they'd get one. Because family or not, no one steals my life and walks away smiling. The day of the housewarming party arrived with unsettling calm. The Victorian glowed from a distance, lights blazing in every window like it was already alive with new owners. Cars lined the street. Laughter spilled out into the night air. I parked 2 blocks away, folder of documents tucked under my arm phone in my pocket with the recording ready. My pulse pounded so loud it felt like I was carrying a drum inside my chest. At 7 sharp, Aunt Linda's text buzzed, "Party's going strong. Back doors unlocked. Come now." I walked quickly, head down, breath shallow. When I reached the back entrance, Linda stood waiting. Her face pale but resolute, she squeezed my hand. "Be careful," she whispered. "They won't see this coming." Inside, the noise was deafening. Music, clinking glasses, overlapping conversations. I could hear my mother's voice above it all, clear, cheerful, commanding. She was giving a speech. I lingered in the hallway listening. "We are so proud," Mom announced, raising her glass to give this beautiful house to our daughter Megan. "She has worked so hard for this moment, and she deserves every bit of happiness this home will bring her." Applause rippled through the room. My father added with pride, "Megan has always been our shining star. This is her dream come true." The words hit like blows. Worked so hard Megan hadn't worked a stable job in years. Dream come true. It was my nightmare. I stepped forward, my heels echoing against the hardwood. The room hushed instantly as heads turned. Dozens of eyes fixed on me. Why, I said loudly, my voice steady despite the quake in my chest. "Are all these people in my house?" A silence fell so thick, you could almost hear the sound of glasses being lowered. My mother's face flushed crimson. She recovered quickly, plastering on a smile. "This house doesn't belong to you anymore," she announced, voice carrying to every corner. "You gave it to us, and we gave it to Megan." A murmur of confusion swept through the guests. Really, I pulled the folder from under my arm, snapping it open. Because before you give something away, you need to actually own it. "Would you like to see proof of who the legal owner is?" Gasps. People leaned forward. I raised the deed high. Here it is. Every document signed and notarized. This house belongs to me and always has. My parents never owned it, and they never had the right to give it away. My father stepped forward, face mottled red. "Stephanie told us she was giving us this house. We have confirmation. You can't take back a promise." "Confirmation," I snapped. "Show me the signed papers. Show me anything legal that proves your claim." I swept the room with my gaze. Did they show any of you guess those papers? Or did they just tell you their version and expect you to believe it? The whispers grew louder. People shifted uncomfortably. Megan's smile faltered. "I promised nothing in writing," I continued. "And even if I had promises, aren't legal contracts. Especially not when the intention is to steal. Because that's what this is, theft." I pulled another paper from the folder and slammed it down on the coffee table, an eviction notice. The sharp slap echoed like a gunshot. "This is an official eviction order. Every one of you is trespassing in my home. The party is over. Leave now, or I'll call the police." The room erupted. Guests murmured, some edging toward the door, unwilling to be part of the scandal. My mother's composure cracked. "How dare you humiliate us like this, after everything we've done for you? Everything you've done for me." I cut her off, my voice low but slicing. "You used me. You manipulated my grief. You planned to strip me of both houses while laughing about it behind my back." The crowd went still again. I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Their voices filled the living room, captured in perfect clarity. "Stephanie can be safely used for our purposes. Eventually, we'll take her other house too. She's just a lonely widow. The effect was instant. Gasps, wide eyes, guests covering their mouths. Megan's face drained of color. My father stumbled back as though struck. You mom's voice shook. You had no right to record us. I had every right, I snapped, especially when you were plotting to rob me. Megan burst into tears, collapsing into a chair. I didn't mean it. Stephanie, I was just joking. Joking. My voice thundered, echoing off the walls. That was my husband's grandfather's furniture you called trash. Those were my memories you laughed about throwing out. Was that a joke too? No one answered. Guests whispered furiously among themselves. Someone muttered, disgusting. Another shook their head and said, I can't believe they did this to her. I turned to the room, raising my voice so everyone could hear. You've all been invited under false pretenses. This is not Megan's house. It is mine. And if you doubt me, you've just heard the proof. So I'll say this once leave. One by one they obeyed. Glasses were set down, purses collected, coats grabbed. Within 10 minutes, the house emptied of every outsider, leaving only me, my parents, Megan, and Aunt Linda lingering by the door. The silence that followed was venomous. You can't do this to us, Mom, hissed, tears streaking her cheeks. You already have one house. You should share. I stared at her, my voice calm but ice cold. I wanted to share. I wanted to give you this house out of love. But love can't survive theft. None of you deserve this gift. Dad's fists clenched. Megan sobbed louder. But I didn't flinch. Get out, I said evenly. All of you, now. They left angry, crying, muttering curses under their breath. But they left. And when the door shut behind them, I stood alone in the Victorian. The silence pressed in again, but it was different now. No longer oppressive. Now it felt like something else. Mine. Still, as I looked around at the empty rooms, the triumph was hollow. They were my family, my blood, and I had just torn us apart forever. The night of the party lingered in my veins like poison, even after the last guest had gone and the house was mine again. I couldn't shake the image of my mother's red face, Megan's sobs, my father's clenched fists. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hollow, as though reclaiming my home had cost me something I could never replace. 2 days later, I learned the battle wasn't over. My phone buzzed with a notification from Facebook. My mother had posted a long, dramatic rant. Our daughter betrayed us. She promised us a home, swore to give us a safe place in our old age, then ripped it away with lies. We raised her with love, and this is how she repays us. A liar, a fraud, a heartless woman. The words blurred as I read them. Comment after comment piled up beneath. I'm so sorry you don't deserve this. How could she do that to her own parents, family, friends, cousins, neighbors, all offering sympathy to them? Within hours, relatives began messaging me. Some asked in confusion. Others accused outright. Is it true you tricked your parents? Why would you promise them something and then take it back? Each ping of my phone felt like a stone hurled at my chest. But I'd been waiting for this. That evening, I wrote my own post. Short, sharp. Alongside it, I uploaded the attic recording. Their voices spilled into the digital world, every manipulative word, every casual cruelty. Stephanie can be safely used. Eventually, we'll take her other house too. Lonely widow. The reaction was immediate. The comments section turned into a battleground. Some relatives switched sides, horrified. I can't believe they said this about you. Stay strong, Stephanie. But others doubled down. That's still your family. You should forgive. It's just words you don't need 2 houses anyway. And then came the dagger from someone I thought I could trust, my cousin Jenny. Her comment read, I have to tell the truth. Mom and Dad told everyone Stephanie was an alcoholic after David died. They said she was unstable, and that's why she wanted to give them the house so she wouldn't sell it and waste the money on booze. My heart plummeted. So that was the story they'd spun. They hadn't just plotted behind my back, they'd already been poisoning my reputation for months. The pitying looks at family gatherings, the whispers I hadn't quite caught, they all made sense now. I slammed my laptop shut and sat in the dark, shaking. Every layer of betrayal dug deeper. My family hadn't just wanted my house. They wanted to destroy me piece by piece until no one would believe a word I said. Days passed in a haze of online warfare. Every time I opened my phone, there were more accusations and more debates. Strangers taking sides as though this were entertainment. It was exhausting. Then a week later came the final blow. An email from a law firm I didn't recognize. The subject line, legal action notice. My stomach flipped as I read, our clients, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, intend to pursue legal action against you for promissory fraud. You made a binding promise to gift them property, then reneged, causing emotional and financial damages. I nearly laughed from disbelief. A lawsuit. After everything, I forwarded the email to my lawyer with one line, "Please handle this joke." He called me an hour later, chuckling. "They don't have a case, Stephanie. Verbal promises aren't binding, especially about gifts. And with that recording, they'd be laughed out of court. If they push this, they'll end up paying your legal fees." I exhaled shakily. So it's over. For them, yes. Legally, you're untouchable. But I can't promise they'll stop trying to ruin your reputation. He was right. The legal threat evaporated within days after his firm's stern response. But the silence that followed from my family wasn't peace. It was exile. No more calls, no more texts, no more knocks on my door. My parents and Megan simply disappeared. At first, I waited for them to come crawling back, some apology, some explanation. But weeks passed and nothing came. It was like they'd cut me out of the family tree entirely, except for the occasional bitter whispers I heard about through Aunt Linda. "Your dad says Stephanie ruined everything. Your mom cries about the house every night, says you stabbed her in the back. Megan tells people she was robbed of her future." Each report twisted the knife, but a part of me hardened with every word. I looked at myself in the mirror one morning and barely recognized the woman staring back. My face was thinner eyes shadowed, but there was steel in them now. A year ago, I'd been a grieving widow clinging to family as my last anchor. Now I was an island, and maybe that was better. The betrayal had burned something out of me, something naive, something that once believed blood was thicker than truth. But it had also lit a fire, because if family could try to ruin me, I could damn well learn to live without them. 6 months have passed since the night of the housewarming party. Half a year of silence, of absence, where my family used to be. And strangely, it's been the most peaceful time of my life since David died. There are no more desperate phone calls about broken heaters. No more frantic texts from Megan about overdue rent. My days belong to me now. Work fills the weekdays, quiet routines anchor the nights. For the first time in a long time, I breathe without waiting for someone to need me. Aunt Linda is the only thread that connects me to the others. Over coffee in her kitchen, she updates me against my better judgment. Megan's in a shoebox apartment now. She told me last week, shaking her head. Working 2 part-time jobs just to scrape by. First time she's ever paid her own rent. She's different. Tired. Maybe humbled. I nodded, unsure whether to feel vindicated or sad. Megan had called me selfish, a lonely widow. Now she was living the independence she mocked me for. Was it punishment or simply life catching up with her? And your parents, Linda continued sighing. They're still in that old house. Roof leaks worse than ever. Your dad's been trying to fix things himself, but you know how he is stubborn cutting corners. It's falling apart around them. I pictured them there, water-stained ceilings, creaking floors, the same complaints replaying like a record. My father grumbling that I was to blame. My mother crying into the same bucket that had caught rainwater for years. "They still think you ruined everything," Linda added quietly. I looked down at my coffee, watching the steam curl upward. They ruined everything themselves, I thought. Out loud, I said nothing. There are nights when guilt creeps in like an old ghost. I lie awake and wonder, what if I'd gone through with the gift? What if I'd ignored the recording? Swallowed their betrayal. Let them have the house just to keep peace. Would things be easier? Would I still have a family? But then I remember their voices in that attic. Stephanie can be safely used. Eventually we'll take her other house too, and the ghost of guilt vanishes. Because the truth is clear, if I had given them one house, they would have taken both. If I had surrendered once, I would have spent the rest of my life surrendering. I visit the Victorian often now, not to gloat, not to guard it, but to be there. The house feels less like a battlefield and more like a sanctuary again. I've been slowly sorting through the attic, opening box after box of David's grandfather's belongings, photographs yellowed with age, a tin box filled with letters tied in ribbon, toys carved by hand. Each discovery feels like stitching myself closer to David again, closer to the roots of the family that had welcomed me before everything turned rotten. Sometimes I sit on the floor of the parlor, surrounded by those memories, whispering to him, "I kept it safe, love." They tried to take it, but I didn't let them. I still haven't decided what to do with my smaller house. Some days I imagine renting it out, other days selling it. But the Victorian, that one feels like home now, not because it's bigger or grander, but because it holds something sacred, something no betrayal can touch. Of course, not everyone agrees. Half of my relatives still whisper that I should reconcile, that family is family, and blood is thicker than money. But those people weren't in the attic with me. They didn't hear my sister laughing about throwing out David's grandfather's furniture, didn't hear my parents dismiss me as a lonely widow to be managed. They don't know what it's like to discover your own blood has written you out of their future. I do, and I've decided I'm better off without them. My real family isn't defined by blood. It's Aunt Linda, who risked her own relationships to help me walk into that party. It's the friends who sat with me during David's chemo, who brought casseroles and laughter when my house felt like a tomb. It's the people who don't see me as a wallet or a burden, but as Stephanie, grieving, imperfect, trying, still here. I'm 35. I may be a widow. I may never remarry, may never have children. My sister's cruel words echo sometimes, reminding me of what I'm lacking. But I'd rather stand alone in my truth than live surrounded by people who see me only as a means to an end. One evening, not long ago, I stood at the Victorian's window, watching dusk settle over the neighborhood. The stained glass fractured the fading light into reds and blues across the floor. For the first time in years, I felt something like peace. Fragile, tentative, but real. I whispered into the quiet, not sure if I was speaking to David or to myself. I'm not afraid anymore. Maybe Megan will call someday full of apologies. Maybe my parents will break under the weight of their crumbling house and reach out. Maybe, but if they do, I know my answer. Love without respect is just control, and I will never hand myself over to that again. This is my life, my choice, my house, my freedom. And for the first time in years, I'm ready to live it.